Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's video. In this video, we are going to be talking about the concept of Allah's oneness by contemplating on some of the descriptions that have been given in the Quran regarding the nature of Allah. In the previous video on this topic, we defined God as the operating force behind everything in existence. Please make sure that you have watched the previous videos on the topic of God, as we might be covering some terms which have already been discussed. In the previous video, we said that Allah is the force in existence without which everything else cannot exist, which thus makes God the only real significant entity in existence. We gave the example of God's existence being perceived through the motions of the universe. In today's video, we are going to be examining this concept in a bit more detail and try and show that it is impossible for there to be any other force other than this Grand Unifying Force, i.e. Allah. This force permeates throughout the cosmos, across the fabric of space and time, and it is responsible for shaping the universe as we know it. It is what binds the smallest particles together, allowing for the formation of hadrons, which it combines to form protons and neutrons, from which we get atoms, the building blocks of all matter. It is this force that allows for the attractions between charged particles and the radioactive decay of atoms over time. This force is the Grand Unifying Force behind every single thing in existence, without which nothing in existence would exist. We also spoke a little bit about the word God and what it means. We explained that the word God simply meant force, and by that we mean an agent of power or authority or influence over something else. When something has agency of authority and power over you, then that thing by definition becomes your God. Let us take a look at a few examples from both the Bible as well as the Quran to show that this was in fact the understanding of the ancient people. In the book of Exodus chapter 7 verse 1, it reads, "And the Lord said unto Moses, See, I have made thee Elohim unto Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet." Note the word Elohim is maintained in the verse. Now obviously, the meaning of this passage is not to suggest that Moses was somehow divine, or that it was to him that Pharaoh owed worship, adoration, and submission. Rather, it means that Moses was given power, authority, and superiority over Pharaoh, hence why he is referred to as God, Elohim, to Pharaoh. The terms Elohim or El were merely designated titles for any power, force, or entity that possessed authority or influence over another person. It did not merely signify divinity, perfection, or being worshipped. In the book of Psalms, chapter 82, it reads, "Elohim takes his stand in the congregation of El. Among Elohim he judges." Here in this passage, Elohim is seen taking his seat among the congregation of El, and he, i.e. Elohim, judges amidst the Elohim. The passage is said to be depicting a scene wherein Elohim functions as the judge of the council of divine beings, here also referred to with the title Elohim. Thus, in this passage, Elohim is both used for powers but also for a designated title for God. Elohim is not differentiated from other Elohim, which means that this title did not refer to God exclusively, but rather anything that possessed power, authority, and influence over other things. So we can clearly see from these passages that the term Elohim, popularly designated for God, was a term that could be applied to any being or thing which had power, authority, and superiority over someone or something else. Similarly, in the New Testament, in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, we read the following: Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. This passage similarly confirms what we just explained earlier about the definition of the term God among the ancient people. Here, obviously again, no one actually believes that Satan is God, the creator of the earth, yet he is referred to as God due to his influence, power, and authority over so many people. Similarly, in the Quran itself we read, "Has thou seen the one who takes his lusts as his God, and whom God has let go astray despite having knowledge? أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ وَأَضَلَّهُ اللَّهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ." In this passage, we see that the Quran turns our attention to someone who has taken his own desires and lusts as his ilah, translated as God. Here, once again, this individual is obviously not worshipping their desires and assuming that their desires created them, nor are they praying to their desires. Rather, it is meant as such because it is the influence, power, and authority that this individual has let their desires have over them, which in turn makes their desires God to them. So, to iterate what we have covered so far, the term God did not exclusively refer to someone or something which was worshipped, or even appealed to for help with prayers. Rather, it referred to something which had power and authority and influence over another thing. This can also be seen in the different religions around the world, which tend to worship created objects. In the ancient, when they referred to the sun, for example, as God, it is because the sun has power over the earth, because without it, life would not exist here on earth, which means that it has a control over life here on earth in a certain way. So that is why they referred to it as God. They didn't think that this was somehow divine or anything of the sort. Rather, it was because of that thing's power and authority and influence over the earth. Thus, the statement, "There is no God but Allah," is not just a statement of faith, but it is also a statement that reflects reality, as we know. In the grand scale of things, there is nothing but this force that matters, as without it, nothing can ever exist. It is my contention that if we were to rewind time back to the formation of planets, molecules, atoms, subatomic particles, and even time itself, we would see that there is one common source for everything, a grand unifying force or energy, as some might put it. It is not possible to have the matter that we see in existence without there having been some kind of force or energy to hold together the particles or objects or bring them into existence. This ultimate force or energy source is indestructible, stable, and indivisibly unique, and it gave birth to the universe as we know it and everything that it contains. In our study of the universe, we have subdivided this grand unifying force into multiple forces. However, essentially, it is just one single force. The one force which permeates and is manifested throughout the entire universe. Hence why Allah is referred to as As-Samad in the Quran, as it is the indestructible refuge of all things. It does not procreate, nor was it begotten. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. And there is nothing comparable to it, as it is the unifying force of all things. Allahu Ahad. It is in no need of anything or anyone. It is Al-Ghani, whereas everything else is in need of it. It is self-subsisting, Al-Qayyum, meaning it is self-maintaining and self-regulating. It is enduring, and it does not experience fatigue or slumber. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. And the maintaining and preservation of the entire universe does not overcome it. ولا يعوده حفظهما. For it, creating one sole atom or particle and creating the entire universe are all the same. ما خلقكم ولا بعثكم إلا كنفس واحدة. It is capable of bringing the universe into being, Al-Fatir, and recreating it anew over and over again. Allahu yabda'ul khalqa thumma yu'idu. And in that process, none of its power would have diminished in the least. This force is what we refer to as Allah, the Grand Unifying Force, which operates and maintains everything in existence. With these descriptions in mind, it is therefore of no surprise why the Quran stresses the statement that there is no God, i.e. no other force other than Allah, meaning the Grand Unifying Force, as this is the reflection of reality. It is because there cannot be any other force other than the one unifying force. So when we say that there is no God but Allah, we mean that there is no force which has influence, power, authority over creation other than the one grand unifying force, or that there exists no force with influence over existence except the one single force from which everything else originated. The one single force which unites and binds everything in existence. And that force we call Allah. This concept of a force is one that permeates all of existence, and it is likewise one which is attested to in all other religions and philosophies around the world. It is also one that becomes more and more apparent as we unravel the mysteries of the universe. Aside from this force of oneness being a fact of reality, it is also a freeing concept. It allows the human being to be free and see reality as it is. It means that nothing in existence should have absolute authority over you except the Grand Unifying Force, as it is the one inescapable force that permeates throughout the entire universe. The Grand Unifying Force is meant to be understood as the force against tyranny of the other. Nothing should hold sway over the self-you, as you were created in servitude to the one Grand Unifying Force alone, and not to any other, as there is none but it that does and should govern you. Hence, with this understanding of what Allah is, we can safely deduce that any other path other than this path leads to nothing but tyranny and enslavement of the self. One hears people typically assume that believing in God somehow enslaves the mind, whereas this is actually not true at all. By believing in God, and by God we mean, as we have already defined, only then can one realistically be truly free. As per the definition of God presented herein, it is therefore my contention that it would be unreasonable for a reasonable mind to choose atheism as a path and still proclaim to be free in reality. Thank you very much for watching. In the next video, inshallah, we are going to be looking at how we can find God by recounting the story of someone who went on a journey of self-discovery to discover God. and no, it's not Moses. Comment down below if you have anything to add as to what I have presented in the video, or if you have any questions about the topic. Take very good care everyone, and I will see you in the next video inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.